to Renegade Conversations. This is Season 3, Episode 15. My guest today is a lawyer who has transformed the way she practices law, a hockey player, and a member of a band called the Mother Pluckers. I can't wait for you to meet her. My name is Meryl Cook. I'm an artist, a renegade, and the host and creator of Renegade Conversations. My mission is to provide thought-provoking, fearless, and fun discussions with remarkable female rebels who are shaking things up in their respective fields. My hope is to make you question the norms and ignite your own renegade spirit. This episode of Renegade Conversations is sponsored by Menna Riley. Menna is an executive networking coach and powerhouse community builder. She has a proven track record of events that connect, workshops that inspire, and training that transforms and helps her clients convert conversations into invaluable connections. Inspired by her vision to elevate the overall professional networking landscape and empower women in business, Menna has curated one of Nova Scotia's most powerful communities in leading ladies networking. Her signature events have helped over 5,000 women build their careers, connections, and community since its inception in 2011. Menna specializes in delivering dynamic networking events and training programs for associations, firms, and individuals looking to sharpen their networking presence and build lasting relationships, one conversation at a time. Get your copy of Menna's free networking advice ebook called The Ultimate Girlfriend's Guide to Networking. It was inspired by 16 powerhouse women in Atlantic Canada. My next guest is Corinne Boudreau. Corinne is the daughter of a teacher and a lawyer. This probably explains a lot about her desire to share and explain the legal stuff. Being a business lawyer since 2002 has given Corinne the perspective and experience to boil things down to the essentials. Corinne is originally from Cape Breton Island and lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia with her spouse, 2 kids, and rescue pup Kiwi. Corinne's hobbies include playing guitar with her band, the Mother Pluckers, and volunteering in her community. So welcome, Corinne. It's really nice to see you again. Corinne,
Thanks,
you and I
Rachel.
go way back to a program for female entrepreneurs through the Center for Women in Business. Back when I was still a homeopath and you were still practicing business law through a traditional law firm. We've both really transformed our businesses and followed our dreams. So we've stayed in touch beyond the Center for Women in Business through an informal business group, but we really haven't had the chance to connect much in the last couple of years. So I'm so excited to catch up with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Meryl. I'm glad that you invited me, and it is a great chance to get caught up.
Yeah.
I'm finding now, I am starting to go out and go to more networking events, and it's great to reconnect with people that I haven't seen much in the last number of years.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. I think we all really missed this whole segment of being together during the pandemic. So thanks so much for agreeing to hop on Zoom and have this conversation with me. So, Corinne, what does being a renegade mean to you?
Well, I think I've spent a bunch of time thinking about this over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for that. I think it's been a good reflection exercise. So I think I've always thought of myself as being an independent thinker and not necessarily accepting the status quo. So I think that's probably the first place that my mind goes to when I think about being a renegade. Is just, being independent and kind of coming up with your own path.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. And have you always been a renegade? Has that always been your pattern?
So I put yes. So I think I've always been what I would describe as a quiet renegade. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm a fan of your podcast, and I've listened to some of the other guest interviews, and some of them talked about, being more talking a lot and being sort of expressing themselves in kind of loud ways and boisterous ways. And I think that doesn't describe me, but I think I always sort of, and my friends have pointed this out. Sometimes they can see that I just kind of go quiet and the wheels start turning. And then they can tell that I'm just going to go off on a tangent. And so I reflected on this and I thought, yeah, I think I always have been a renegade. And then I checked with my mother. So if you're lucky enough to still have your mother around, this is a great question to ask your mother. And she said, yes, you have. You've always been very, I think she said, I think independent was the word that she used. And she kind of brought up an example where she was talking to my piano teacher. And my piano teacher said, yes, I can always tell when Corinne's going to do something, like she's not going to take my direction. She's going to do her own thing. And so I think people have just kind of recognized that throughout my life, that sometimes I just, I don't necessarily make a lot of noise, but I just go, okay, that's nice. And I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really great. And what impact has being a renegade had then on your life and your career? Kind of what kinds of opportunities and maybe some challenges that it has presented for you?
Well, I think if I go way back, because I think probably everything starts in our childhood, I think people described me as a tomboy when I was a kid growing up. And I think that did have some impact on me, because that wasn't always said with like in a positive way.
Right.
So I always liked sports. I still love sports. So I loved playing sports. I drove a dirt bike. I liked sailing. I didn't want to wear a dress. I've never worn makeup. Like, so in lots of ways, again, I think people call them now, like, they're very small things, but I think all the small things kind of add up. So again, as a child, I kind of sometimes didn't always get positive feedback from everybody about that. So I think you kind of have to have some kind of inner resolve. And I feel like sports and probably also music, sports and music are always the two themes kind of in my life. They kind of helped me to express myself and feel confident in doing that. So I think I have a child now who's halfway through a university degree, and she's already kind of talking about what's next. And I remember my first midlife crisis. It sounds funny saying this now in my mid 50s, but at 22, I was like, I have a business degree. What am I going to do now? I don't want to be a finance person. I don't want to go work at a bank. I'm not an accountant. Like, I think that was the first time that I thought, I want to do something a little different. But at that time, entrepreneurship was not really something that was talked about. It wasn't something that was taught. It wasn't a course in a business school. So at that point, I was like, ooh, I want to travel. So at that point, traveling and working abroad and doing a whole variety of different jobs, I think expanded my worldview and just helped me again to see that there were different possibilities out there. And you didn't always have to follow like the straight and narrow path. And I think it's one of the things that drew me to law. I always say that I like to get to know people before I tell them that I'm a lawyer, but anyway, here we are. Is that I like to solve puzzles and I like to help people. And it seemed like you wouldn't necessarily have to do that all in straight lines. So, but unfortunately, or, whatever. I mean, it's all part of the journey. But when I got into a very traditional law practice, I found out that coloring inside the lines was much more important than thinking outside of the box. So.
And I guess that didn't sit very well with you.
No, it felt very, I guess people have different ways of expressing that. A few years later, wrote a song called Soul Sucking Situation. And that's how I expressed how weird it felt to be in a situation. And whenever I sing this, especially to groups of entrepreneurs, there's like heads nodding and people poking each other. And so it felt very weird to have achieved something, got a great job, and then been like, this is not for me. So that definitely impacted that particular career path, was just not being able to continue to function. And I know lots of people have this experience, but I think that's the origin story for a lot of entrepreneurs, is just being inside a workplace that it's not terrible necessarily, but it's also just not a fit.
You're not blossoming. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
You're not being your best self. So tell me about your trajectory then when you started your legal essentials business. I mean, I've listened to you about that, and I think it's such an interesting story.
Yeah, well, and you were there for some of it. You've already mentioned that we met through a program at the Center for Women in Business, but I always give the Center for Women in Business in Nova Scotia a lot of credit because it was a spot where I came with a business idea and I did feel that people helped, support me. And one
Mhm.
of the people, Nora Perry, again, she's probably tired of me mentioning her, but she gave me a call one time and said, Corinne, um, we have programming for what we call in Nova Scotia workplace education, programs that we can provide to entrepreneurs. And I know that I'd previously taught a legal course at Dell to dentists, strangely enough, fourth year
Uh-huh.
dental students. And she said,
Yeah.
would you think about putting together a curriculum for small business owners? And I said, sure. And so I always say yes. This is another
Mhm.
characteristic of me. I say yes, and then I figure the how out later.
Yeah.
So when Nora called me, I was actually in PEI on vacation, drinking beer, eating mussels. And she called me and I'm like, sure, that sounds great. And then, of course, later on, you figure out, oh, I have to build a 40-hour course curriculum. But that was one of those sort of pivotal moments where it gave me an opportunity to do things differently and
Mhm.
to kind of work it out. So, again, teaching concepts, teaching things in a very practical way that people can understand and apply. That's the whole that's the whole premise of workplace education, is teaching
Mhm.
very things in a very practical way, adult, learning principles and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
it helped me work on, okay, this is what small business owners need. So when I would say something and you could just see, the penny drop, so to speak,
Yes.
and I'd be like, okay, that's great. That's an important point. I need to make sure and find ways to help people action that. So that
Mhm.
was a real turning point. And then, so we're talking around about, um, 2016, 2017, I was kind of reimagining law in many different ways. So I did
Uh-huh.
start out with a virtual law practice on my own in 2013,
Mhm.
fixed fees, a very narrow scope of practice. Some of these things seem kind of normal in 2024, but back
Mhm.
then they were quite unusual.
Oh, they
Um,
were, especially the
yeah,
fixed fees part,
yeah,
right?
because I
Yeah.
I just despise, part of the soul sucking situation was um, just not being able to tell people how much things were going to cost, and just be like, don't worry, trust me, it's going to be, $300-400 an hour, but I don't know how many hours, and I can't even tell you what the process is going to look like. That just
Uh-huh.
drove
Yeah.
me crazy. So I was reimagining, I think, and I did a lot of reading about, people writing about the future of law and all this kind of stuff. So teaching that course helped me to reimagine how I could get legal information to small business owners who sure need it,
Yeah.
in a more timely way, in a more cost effective way. um and that kind of led to me thinking, okay, again, we're talking like 2017, 2018 now, I need to put this online. Like, this is
Uh-huh.
where the world is going. So
Yes.
that kind of led me to learning all about creating an online business and
Uh-huh.
online marketing. And I went to my early sort of person that I was following, Amy Porterfield, went to a bunch of her conferences in California
Mhm.
and learned all about this
Yep.
online business world. And so that was kind of took me in a, completely different direction. But it really started with that nugget of having an opportunity, and I guess having the courage or something to say yes when I
Yes.
didn't really know what it was going to look like. I was like, yes, that feels right.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really a mark of a renegade, isn't it? In that um you find something and you say, okay, that feels good, and therefore I'm going to make it work. You
Mm-hmm.
just you kind of go for it when you find something like that.
And
Yeah.
for some years, I've had this rule, and I wish I could remember exactly where it came from, but somebody was saying, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
And so I've just followed that, and I wouldn't say it hasn't ever led me astray, but it's led me to some interesting places,
Yeah.
and some great opportunities. And I think that kind of feeds my, if people were to um, if I were to ask my friends and family words to describe me, I'd say adventurous is one of the words that kind of would keep popping up. So it
Yes.
just felt like, yeah, I'm ready to step into this adventure.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I remember those days when you were first taking courses with Amy Porterfield and how exciting it was to think about doing an online legal business that really had never been done before. So that's very cool. So, what's capturing your heart and energy these days? So we've kind of done a retrospective, but what's going on these days with your business and your life that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that keeps my heart singing is, and I kind of go back and forth about live teaching, like getting on Zoom, getting in front of a group of people. We're kind of going back to in person and having the opportunity to explain things
Mhm,
in a way that no one's ever heard them before. And you
mhm.
see the light bulbs go on. So
Yeah.
I feel like having the ability to impact small business owners who can then grow their businesses and, you know,
Mhm,
impact their communities, that still makes my heart sing. So that's
yeah.
kind of one of the things. I think having an online business has allowed me to reach out all across the country, which is great
Mhm,
because
mhm.
normally as a lawyer you're very much limited to your geographic area,
Uh-huh.
and being able to again reach out across the country to different groups of business owners and different industry groups, and that's that's just super fun. And again, I look forward to being able to get on the road. I would love to do a cross Canada tour at
Uh-huh.
some point. I'm just
Oh,
putting that
that's
out
nice.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe we could do that together. I could do a Wild Women Renegade conversation evening and a networking event, and we could do your legal essentials across the country. That would be really
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
awesome. And so tell me about your online template store, because I think you run that every now and then, and I know that it's a wonderful resource for small businesses.
Hmm. So after doing all this learning in 2019, I launched what's become my signature program, the Canadian Online Legal Template Library. We just abbreviated as COLT. But that's kind of become um, again the main piece, the big rock of the foundational piece of my online business.
Uh-huh.
So what it allows people to do is have access to templates with video guides, and I also have like live Q&A sessions. So it really has created a great community and a place and resources for people that they can kind of, and it's, legal essentials has always been a term that we first coined back in 2016, and
Yeah.
it's kind of carried through. So, yeah, I have an online template store, which again has been part of that
Uh-huh.
shifting to a kind of an
Uh-huh.
e-commerce business.
Yeah.
So people can go if they just want a bite size. I kind of call it the a la carte menu. You can just
Yes.
get if you just need the website stuff. But if you want the full meal, the 3 course or the all you can eat buffet, however you like to think of it, that's really the template library. So
Uh-huh.
it's been fun to again be able to create something that seems to be meeting an unmet need out
Yeah, like
there
so for
in the
example,
market.
things that I know that you have there are like if I want to do a contract with somebody, sort of you have demo contracts so that people can figure out how to contract with somebody for services or there's
Yeah.
very practical kind of advice. I love it.
And yeah, and they're kind of bundled into packages. So sometimes
Mhm.
people come to me and say, I'm starting a new coaching practice. What are all the legal things I need? So I kind of
Uh-huh.
have a package for
Yeah.
coaches, which again would be like
Yeah.
the coaching agreement and all the website stuff, and
Mhm.
probably some releases if they're taking testimonials or
Yeah.
taking photos and podcasters. And so
Mhm. Mhm.
there a
Excellent.
lot of things that online businesses need. And sometimes people say to me, how did you, so when I started out the template library, we had like 30 templates and now it's up to 70 plus. How did I do that? I mean, I just listen. Like there's some magic in listening to what people need out there. So
Uh-huh.
kind of being part of the community that I'm serving has stood me well because I can
Right.
be in there and people ask me, do you have this? Do you have that? And if I don't, then I go make it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that philosophy. It's served you well. So, Corinne, this is sort of an off the wall question, but did you bring a drink to share today?
I did. I did. Although I am not currently drinking it because it's too early in the morning for this, but I will crack one open as soon as it's appropriate. So Compass Gin Royale. This is one of my favorite local
Nice.
gin products. And you can see that I have actually consumed at least this much of it so far. But I especially like to drink it in the spring because it's a tribute to bees and pollinators, whose work create beautiful spirits like gin.
Yeah.
So in addition to the regular botanicals that gin normally has in it, it also has honey, local sourced honey, and butterfly pea blossoms. So
I think
which
that's
give
what
it
gives it that beautiful
that
color.
color. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
if you put tonic in with it, it actually turns a bit purple. So
Oh,
that's cool.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. Good. Yes, that sounds wonderful. Thank you. I'll put a link to that product in the show notes on my website.
That's right. Try to drink local as well. Eat
Yes,
local, shop local, drink local.
drink local. Yeah, I'm on that bandwagon as well. So, Corinne, in grade 2, what kind of a kid were you?
Well, I think someone would have described me. I don't know if the word renegade, but I was a renegade independent kid back then.
Mhm,
I was thinking back to grade 2, and I was actually my elementary school had the little building, which is primary 1, and
mhm.
then the big school, which was, it sounds funny saying that now, 2 to 6.
Uh-huh.
But for some reason, and this is probably because we are a bit renegades, they left a few of us grade 2s back at the little building to be in a split class.
Ah,
So I think it's interesting because from my memory of grade 2 and my teacher, Mrs. Curry, um, the ones of us that were in grade 2, she kind of let us do things very independently because most of the kids in the class were in grade 1. So I
uh-huh.
remember loving this year because I was very fearless and very, I think, competitive, maybe, but I love to push myself. So I remember my friend Janet and I, this sounds very geeky, but racing ahead in math books. And she would let us, you know what I mean? Like do whatever we thought was interested us. And
That's
I remember that year, I don't have a lot of trophies left from my childhood. I grew up in an age of trophies, especially because I
yes.
played sports. But I do have one from winning field day when I was in grade 2. Um, so I just remember loving the feeling of being able to push my body and like sports. That was kind of like when my love of sports started,
Oh,
because I won
nice.
field day and I used to sail out in Sydney Harbor, in Cape Breton, and sometimes off North Sydney and sometimes too far off North Sydney. We would all start to float out to sea towards Newfoundland. But I was fearless in liking to do all of these, especially
Uh-huh.
physical things, and challenge
Yeah.
myself. But also, again, I remember, like I said, racing ahead in the math books.
Mm.
And my friend Janet, who was racing ahead, she's ended up having, getting a PhD and having 7 children, and she's definitely challenged herself in her
Yes,
life
in
too.
lots of ways.
Yeah,
That's
so we were a
awesome.
great match back in grade 2.
Nice, nice. And it sounds like it was an ideal environment for you, for a teacher who just kind of let you lead your own learning in many ways. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
And
that's
I guess
wonderful.
maybe teachers don't always have that luxury. If you have 30
Right.
kids and you're trying to keep them all safe.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but this
Yeah,
was a
I agree.
great year for learning for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good. Thanks. So this is a question that I often ask in my workshops and my presentations, and it's a way of getting people to think about their life outside the box, instead of the usual stories that we tell about our lives. And that question is, if you were to draw your life or draw yourself, is there a line or a shape that would define you? And what would that look like?
The first thing that came into my mind was not a box. So I was very anti-box. That was the
Uh-huh.
very first thing that came into my mind. Um, but what kept coming back to, and I can't completely explain this eloquently, at least not yet, was a wheel. Like a
Uh-huh.
wheel was the one that I just kept imagining. And I like the idea of it being, well, obviously circular, but also having like a hub and spokes and
Mm.
just kind of connecting things. Like I was picturing a watch where you have all the interconnected pieces and little wheels where
Mhm.
they
Yep.
kind of work together.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to figure out how to connect things, make things better. So wheels, I mean, it's been a long time since we discovered the wheel,
Yeah.
but I always think of wheels as being something that, yeah, make things work. And yeah, just kind of coming back around to things and looking at
Uh-huh.
them a little bit differently. So wheel
Yeah.
is the one that came to mind.
Cool. I love that. I love and I'm no one's ever said that before. And I think what I love about it is this hub and spokes idea, because you really are a connector in those ways. And yeah, that's very cool. Nice,
Mhm.
nice.
And
So Corinne,
sometimes you do have a flat tire, and sometimes you need to be pumped up a little bit, but yeah,
that's right. And
it
sometimes your
works.
spokes get a little bent, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Corinne, what advice do you have for women or other people who would like to access more of their kind of inner wild self or their inner renegade? How would they get started?
Wow. I don't know if I'm the most qualified to give this advice, but the thing that came to mind was to find something that brings you joy. I
Mm,
think I've always had something in my life that just sparks joy. Again, sometimes it was physical endeavors like um I grew up mostly playing basketball and I loved that for a long time, and then in my late 30s started playing hockey, and that really brought me joy. But
yeah,
in the past 14 years I've been in a band. So every Tuesday afternoon I met these group of ladies playing hockey, and we started jamming at someone's house. And you've heard this story before.
yeah.
But for 14 years on Tuesday afternoons, we get together and we play music. And sometimes it's we do perform in public by times, but sometimes we practice as well. So it has brought me such joy. And just knowing that I have a regular thing in my calendar to do, it's both social and creative.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's just that thing for me that brings me joy. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes giving ourselves the time and permission to find that, and
Mhm.
to I always say, being like, having fun is one of my core values, and I think it's underrated. A lot of people
Mhm.
underrate
Mhm.
having fun and bringing
Yeah,
joy. So
yeah.
anyway, that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Find something, keep searching around for something that brings you joy, and then put it in your calendar and make it a regular occurrence, because it has a compounding effect for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, because once you're being creative and finding something that brings you joy, it sort of has this ripple effect out to other parts of your life. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Awesome. And your band is called?
The Mother Pluckers.
And what's your hockey team called?
Well, the I'm not playing in the league anymore, but our
Okay.
original group of shinny we were the Mother Puckers, and then
Right.
we started
I thought it
plucking,
was
and then
similar.
yeah. So the last
Awesome.
couple of years I haven't played in the league, but I'm looking to get back into it, because now there's this thing called, well, there has been for a while, but I'm getting closer to the magical age, the 55 plus games. So I need to get
Uh-huh.
back into it so that I can play the next time the 55 plus games come around.
Oh, awesome. That's fun. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Thanks, Corinne. And do you have a question for me?
I do. Let me just consult my notes here because I wrote it
Yes.
down. So I I'm always talking with friends about trying to, I feel like it's a time of life where we're trying to connect with our inner selves. And I know you talk about that in some
Mhm.
of what you do, and break through all the outside noise, especially in a time when, news is very negative and things.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you have some beginner tips, like how do you first get into, to find a practice or to do something to start connecting with your inner self? That was
Mm.
what I wanted to hear more about.
That's a really great question. So I think one of the things that I suggest is something that you just suggested, is find something that brings you joy, right? Like start to try to figure out what makes your heart sing, and then notice that, and how does your body feel. And so it's kind of tapping into the body feeling of when you feel joy. I know I've told this story many times, that when I was walking to radiation many years ago, every day I was looking for 5 things that brought me joy, and then trying to notice how did my body feel when I felt that joy. And I think tapping into the feeling of joy or the feeling of something positive is, first of all, very grounding and brings you present. And I think to figure out your inner self, you need to be present. you can't be thinking about 50 different things at a time and your to-do list and all these other things. So it's finding a way. So looking for joy is finding a way of being present, but also tapping into how does our body feel? Because we spend a lot of time in our lives, as you know, in our minds, thinking about things and overthinking things and, stressing about things. And so just to really find a really simple practice like that, like just what I would do is I would walk along and look for 5 things that made me happy, and then think about my body and start noticing those. You can also do something really simple like take out your phone camera and take a photo of something that is beautiful, and then just kind of tap into, then pause and say, okay, how did that make me feel to see this beautiful thing? Right now, my big thing is I've downloaded the bird app called Merlin, and it basically you take your phone out and you hear a bird singing, and it'll tell you what the bird is, and it'll show you a picture of the bird, and so that's been my way of focusing in the morning, is when I'm walking my dog, is to listen to the birds and see if I can identify individual birds as I'm walking along. And yeah, I think that's a
awesome.
great place to start, just to find a practice that brings you into the present and that helps you to tap into how does my body feel at this moment? Because we're really good at figuring out how does my body feel when we're stressed, right? But I think if we can develop a practice of how does my body feel when I feel good, then when things are kind of stressful, you can kind of breathe and bring yourself back to that moment. So it helps to kind of, in stressful times, break up the heaviness, break up the confusion, whatever, and just brings us back to ourselves. And yeah, so that's where I would suggest people start. I mean, I also write in a journal, but I don't think everybody has to write in order to start. People,
like
some
that.
people, yeah. Anyway,
My youngest child is about to graduate from high school, and
oh,
my older child is halfway through university, and
mhm.
I'm in this community of parents who are you do have to reimagine yourself and
You
reconnect
do.
with yourself a little bit as your birds are leaving the nest and becoming
Absolutely.
more independent. So yeah, I think those are some great suggestions, and I will share them with my peeps.
Nice. I think that midlife, in particular, especially at your stage when kids are leaving home or whatever, is a perfect time for bringing in a creative practice, for reimagining, as you say, what is our life's purpose. And I'm 55 now, so what do I want to do for the next 45 years? If I'm going to live to 100, what's my next thing, right? So yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. So, Corinne, thanks very much for taking the time to have this conversation. I feel like we could just chat all day, and maybe you should have dropped by my house. We could have just had coffee together. But as always, it's really a pleasure spending time with you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I enjoyed our chat. And I will say one other thing.
Mhm.
This is a complete aside, but I went to the eye doctor as we're recording this. I went to the eye doctor yesterday, and I had to get some reading glasses for the first time. And I
Ah,
thought, I'm going to get me some glasses that make me look more like a renegade. I was thinking ahead to our conversation today. So I
awesome.
don't know if my glasses will be quite as cool as yours, but they will be cooler than your average glasses. So
Oh, that's fun.
this conversation has inspired me in many ways, including my choice of reading glasses. So there you go.
Excellent. Excellent. I think midlife is a perfect time to kind of break out the reading glasses and the whatever clothes you love and things like that. So
Yeah,
great. Well,
excellent.
thanks again. Thanks so much, Corinne. I hope hearing Corinne's story of imagining a different way of practicing law and then designing it has inspired you. If you need a little help getting started, please reach out to me. This episode was sponsored by Menna Riley, an executive networking coach and powerhouse community builder. Menna has a proven track record of events that connect, workshops that inspire, and training that transforms and helps her clients convert conversations into invaluable connections. Inspired by her vision to elevate the overall professional networking landscape and empower women in business, Menna has curated one of Nova Scotia's most powerful communities in leading ladies networking. Her signature events have helped over 5,000 women build their careers, connections, and community since its inception in 2011. Menna specializes in delivering dynamic networking events and training programs for associations, firms, and individuals looking to sharpen their networking presence and build lasting relationships, one conversation at a time. I will post a link to Menna's free networking advice ebook in our show notes. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more Renegade conversations. This podcast is also available wherever you get your podcasts as an audio version. Thanks so much for listening.